I'm going to take care of what I can control. I'm going to plan. I'm going to do the things to set myself up for success. Like I'm going to take care of the game plan, but sports teaches you, and I think just as well as life, that the team that wins the game isn't the team with the best game plan going into the game. It's the team that learns how to adjust their game plan when they're hit with a challenge or hit with an obstacle or hit with something different. And so tactically, I'm always being open to adjusting. I'm always feeling the energy just around me and saying, you know what? Even though externally this doesn't make sense or externally it does, I always go back to my internal alignment of trust in my soul to say, okay, my soul is telling me yes, or my soul is telling me no. And I'm going to listen to that before I listen to anything outside of me. So that's really helped me be able to navigate the uncertainty and the unknown.
Trent, Shelton, this is going to be fun. I want to start with your NFL journey. You bounced around a little bit from practice squads. There was some uncertainty, lots of change. Um, getting cut, all those things. What did all of that teach you?
That's such a good question. It taught me patience, and it taught me trusting the unknown. And I think that's the biggest lesson because, as you know how it is, like I had no idea what my tomorrow was going to hold. No matter how great a practice was, no matter how great things were going, I had no idea. So every single day I would wake up in fear that I would no longer be in that city and I would have to uproot my life and try to figure things out. And so it really taught me you have to trust the unknown because there's really no certainty in life. I mean, yes, we can influence certain things, we can prepare for certain things, but you have to be comfortable in the uncertainty, in the unknown. I realized, like in my journey, even now, I look back and say, man, that's really prepared me for this. I mean, over these last 15 years, because there's times where I didn't know what tomorrow was going to hold. I didn't know how I was going to make these things happen, but I had a peace and a sense of internal alignment and knowing that everything was going to be okay. And I think it was built from that football journey for sure.
How do you do that tactically relative to navigating the unknown? There's so much unknown in the world, right? I mean, you hear people
Yeah.
talk about control the controllables. Obviously, I know you're a man of faith.
Yeah.
Where do you pull that into your life and through your life so that you can show up while navigating uncertainty, which is hard? It's hard to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard. And I think it's about letting go of your ego, number one. I think the ego wants us to always stay in control. I think the ego always wants our way to be right. And I look back, so tactically, I always go back in my past. I always tell people my faith isn't built upon my future necessarily. It's always built upon my past. So what I mean by that is I look at times in my life where, I thought I had everything figured out. I thought I had the vision board, the plan, all like to the script. And I realized that, wow, like it didn't go any way I wanted it to go, but it still went the way I needed it to go. And so I pull a lot of my trust, a lot of my knowing from my past to know, like, okay, cool. I'm going to take care of what I can control. I'm going to plan. I'm going to do the things to set myself up for success. Like I'm going to take care of the game plan, but sports teaches you, and I think just as well as life, that the team that wins the game isn't the team with the best game plan going into the game. It's the team that learns how to adjust their game plan when they're hit with a challenge or hit with an obstacle or hit with something different. And so tactically, I'm always being open to adjusting. I'm always feeling the energy just around me and saying, you know what? Even though externally this doesn't make sense or externally it does, I always go back to my internal alignment of trust in my soul to say, okay, my soul is telling me yes, or my soul is telling me no. And I'm going to listen to that before I listen to anything outside of me. So that's really helped me be able to navigate the uncertainty and the unknown.
And we're going to dig into your book, obviously, protect your peace, which I would imagine you're doing in light of the way that you're navigating the uncertainty. It's protecting your peace. Trent, at what point did you realize sort of this NFL dream, the vision board, as you said, all of that it was over, and how did you come to terms with that and move forward?
Yeah. I can laugh about it now, but it wasn't funny then. But
I'm sure.
but it was 2008, and well, I'll give you two scenarios. 2007, I was with the Colts, and I was going to get my first chance to play a Monday Night Football game, And that whole week, for some reason, like my knee was just bothering me. I just couldn't go full speed. And Coach Dungy came to me Thursday and said, "Hey, we can't use you this week. We wanted to, but you're not 100%, and you're gonna play special teams and all these things. We need a guy that can really go." And so that was the first moment I realized, man, like maybe this isn't meant for me. And then what solidified it was 2008. I was with the Seahawks, and they had just released me, and I was back home, and maybe a week they called me and said, "Hey, we want to bring you back." And so I'm in Dallas, and we're just talking about this offline. Dallas and Fort Worth is pretty far, so I
Right.
got to drive 40 minutes back to my parents' house at the time to catch a flight to go back to Seattle. They say, "No, we want you to come tonight." So I pack all my bags. I tell everybody online, like, I'm going back. And I get to the airport and I get a call from a 206 number. And that 206 number obviously was the Seahawks. And they said, "Hey, have you got on
Mm-hmm.
the plane yet?" And I was like, "No, I'm about to get on right now." And it's like, "Hey, don't get on. Like, we changed our mind. Like, we had something else happen and we're not going to bring you in." So that was the moment where I realized, like, I still had another year of trying to make it, but that was the moment I realized that my NFL career was going to be over and there was something meant for my life, because no matter how many times I did the right thing, that door would not open for my life. And so
Mm-hmm.
I had to just come to grips that there's something bigger. And it was hard because I never knew anything else since I was 4 years old in sports. But I
Mm-hmm.
had to trust that, there was something more to my life. And it's hard to say what that was, but it was just something in my soul that said, "Hey, you're meant for more. This is the end. This is the beginning." And
Mm-hmm.
I just trusted that small little feeling in my soul.
What did you lose, Trent, inside of that? But what did you gain?
Um, I lost a dream. I lost what I wanted to do, but I gained a purpose. I gained a
Mm-hmm.
true meaning of why I feel like I was created to be put on this earth. And
Mm-hmm.
so the quote that I love to use is, sometimes you have to lose certain things to gain better things. And that's what it showed me. Like, sometimes you got to let go of what you want to do and grab a hold of what you're called to do. So I lost what I wanted to do. I lost
Mm-hmm.
my
Mm-hmm.
North Star, but I gained my world in
Mm-hmm.
losing that. So it truly changed my life and helped my life.
It's amazing, isn't it? Right? I feel like, every day we get closer to living if we listen to our
Mm,
soul, if we
that's right.
listen to, um, God, as I know you and I both are connected with, we can get closer to what we were put here to do. And Trent, for me, I can relate to that. I was a sports agent for almost 20 years, and then started speaking and writing, and the truth is, as much as I loved that, and you loved playing football, man. I mean, that was your
Yeah.
jam since you were 4. And yet you're in fact living your purpose more now, and I feel the same way. And it's hard to see that when you look in the rearview mirror. I mean, it's hard to see that when you're looking out the windshield right in the moment.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
when you
for
look in the
sure.
rearview mirror, you're like, dude, that all made sense.
That's
Right? I
right.
get it now. So that was the beginning of rehab time for you. I love how
Yep.
you talk about that. How did you pull yourself out of that moment of, man, that's all I knew, that's all I wanted, out of that, what some people would say, sort of a dark moment at some level in your life? How did you pull yourself out of that?
You got to face your reality. You have to face and know that whatever it is, it's over. So at any time in my life, when it could be grief, it could be losing somebody you love or losing something that you love, you have to come to the reality that it's over, because you'll never fix what you're not willing to face. And for so long, I ran from that. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to let go of it, because who am I without this? So I had to strip away my identity, because my identity was tied to this, as we said, since I was a little kid. I'm Trent, the football player, Trent, the basketball player, I'm Trent, the
Mm-hmm.
athlete. So
Mm-hmm.
without that title, who am I? So I had to figure out who Trent Shelton was without those things. And you'll never win your war by running from your battles. And I said, I'm tired of running. So I had to face this battle in order to, you know, heal, in order to progress, in order to figure out, like, what was this thing trying to teach me? How can I use this, what I thought was a loss, as a lesson? How can I use this hardest moment of my life and turn it into my biggest blessing? So for me, it was about really doing the work. And that's how rehab time came about. Like, rehab time wasn't to be a speaker. Like, I never had that in my plans. It wasn't to
Right.
be an author, for sure. It wasn't to be any of this. Rehab time was literally a word that I told myself, because I took rehab from sports. When you get hurt, you go to rehab. Rehab
Mm-hmm.
sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if you're not patient, you can get back in the game and hurt yourself even more.
Sure.
But rehab is putting the strength back into a weakness. And I said, man, I want to take that mindset, mind, body, and soul. Mentally, I'm weak in a lot of areas. Okay, I never read a book before like that, personal
Mm-hmm.
development or anything, or I didn't even know what coaches was in the personal development field. Let me see what that's about.
Mm.
Faith, yeah, I believe in God, but am I really building that relationship? And then from my body standpoint, it's like, have I really got to a point where I saw what my best health was? And so mind,
Mm-hmm.
body, and soul, that was rehab time for me. And that was the journey that I went on.
What do you think unlocked that inside of you, that level of, at some level, curiosity that you tapped into to make the shift, to step into the rehab time? I mean, what was it inside of you that tapped into that curiosity?
Yeah, I didn't want to die.
Mm.
And I was in a place in my life where I didn't have anything to live for at that moment. And I had a 1-year-old son that I had to live for. And I didn't want to give up on my life. And my best friend, as a lot of people know, why I started rehab time, had just committed suicide. My college roommate, my teammate, because he lost sports. He lost certain things in his life. And so I said, man, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to end up there. And so I said, man, I got to figure out if there is more. I didn't know. Like
Mm-hmm.
I had to prove myself wrong because I didn't think there was more to my life. So sometimes it's about proving yourself wrong. I say, you know what? I'm going to go find out. If there's nothing more to my life, then great. But I'm going to go find out. And I went to go find out and I realized that there was a lot more to my life.
And you, at some level, let go of people's expectations,
Yeah.
and maybe even your own expectations about what you were supposed to have done. You let go of that and stepped into the change. You shifted your mindset too, I would imagine, in an incredibly powerful way. What was your self talk like during that window of time, Trent?
The time where I was changing or the time before I was changing?
The time when you were changing, the time when you
Yeah.
said, you know what, I'm gonna make a shift. What'd you tell yourself every day?
I went from being my biggest enemy to my greatest supporter. So the language I used was there is something better. There will be something better. The language I used was there's more to my life. The language I used was I'm built for this. The language I use that there's a higher purpose in my pain. So I would tell myself these things over and over. And as an athlete, we know about self-talk, right? We know about the
Mm-hmm.
language that we
Sure.
speak to ourselves will control us. And I realized that. So I had to create what I call some positive soul momentum in my life by starting there because that takes no talent. Now it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of
Mm-hmm.
breaking through trauma and things like that. But I'm like, man, if I can't be my own cheerleader, if I can't be my own supporter, if I can't believe in myself, how can I expect anybody else to do any different? So those words that I end every video with, it all starts with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it started. When I looked in the mirror and say, Trent, whatever it is that you want in this life, it starts with you making a choice and making a decision. That first choice was, I'm not going to be my enemy, not a day longer.
Mm-hmm. How much was your son a part of that, Trent? Right? Sometimes I think about people's purpose in life, and often it's something bigger than themselves. And you mentioned your son. Was that something you went to often relative to why you needed to make the shift, why you needed to step into what was probably hard for sure? Was he at the center of that?
1,000%. I mean, you probably can't see this, but his face is right here.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
I got that tattoo during that time because every time
Mm-hmm.
that I put my head down, I would have to see his face.
That's
And it
awesome.
was a reminder to put my head up. And Tristan, he was the catalyst to making me become a better man, making me realize that somebody is following my path for sure. And I have a choice. I can leave a path that leads to destruction where he spends the rest of his adulthood trying to recover from his childhood, or I can do what my dad did to me and give me the right tools, the right path to set him up for success. And the conversation I had with myself was that question, like, would I want him to follow my path? My answer was no. So I said, I got to
Mm-hmm.
change something. So Tristan, even to this day, all my kids, but
Yeah.
he was definitely, he takes credit for it too. He's like, it's because of me. He was definitely the reason why I wanted to live and why I wanted to create a better life, not just for myself, but for him.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's interesting, and you found your peace through that journey, through that rehab time, through stepping into hard, through shifting your mindset, through all of that, and protect your peace. Your book is fantastic, and
Thank you.
I love, right, you talk about protect your energy, right, from the
Hmm.
things that drain us, and then you talk about protect your mind, you talk about protect your soul, which is so good. Can you break those down just for a hot minute for me and get me
Yeah,
inside of that in Trent's mind, if you will, relative to how that shows up for you?
absolutely. So the first part of protecting your peace is protecting your energy. And I think oftentimes, at least I can speak for myself, we think we have this infinite amount of energy, like all the time. Like we're always going to be energized. But I think about our soul as a battery, and we don't have an infinite amount of energy every single day. We have a certain amount. And at times in my life, I was realizing I was giving my energy to things that didn't reciprocate. I was giving my energy to things that didn't energize my life or multiply my energy. Literally, I was giving my energy to things that drained it. And so I had to realize, man, I had to start setting some boundaries, which is a principle in that section. I had to set
Sure.
some boundaries in my life. And the thing about boundaries that I've been talking about so often is boundaries get a bad rap because people think boundaries are walls to keep things out. And
Mm-hmm.
it can be that if need be, but I like to look at boundaries as bridges to let the right things in. So I started asking myself this question like, okay, if I want more energy, what boundaries do I need to set? So
Mm.
some internal boundaries were the relationship with my cell phone in the morning, which I know everybody talks about.
Sure.
It was the relationship with even the outside world externally, like who don't I need to be around? Like who don't I need to answer accept calls from? Like who's actually reciprocating the energy back to me? So I had to make these decisions and set boundaries to lead me to where I wanted to go. Another part of that process is disconnecting often. So I love nature. I
Mm-hmm.
love getting out in nature. Nature to me is God's natural medicine for the soul. I connect so deeply. So I taught myself to be able to disconnect from the things that's draining my energy. So if you think about anything that has power, it has an outlet. You plug it in. So this light that I'm looking at right now, if I want this
Right.
light to turn on and have power and create energy, I have to plug it in. And so what you're connected to will power you. And I realized a lot of things I was connecting to was disempowering me, not empowering me. So I had to pull the plug in certain things in my life and I had to plug into certain things in my life. And so protecting your energy is all about realizing, you know, what's around you and what are you
Mm-hmm.
giving your energy to? And also, who's giving energy to you? The
Mm-hmm.
second part of the whole process of the book is protect your mind from the things that disturb it. And we have three sections in there. We have guard your focus. We have trust your vision and shift your perspective. And shift your perspective is what I'll speak on. That's been a major, 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 major catalyst to my change because
Mm.
perspective is in your control.
Yeah.
Perspective is how you see the world. And I've realized like the happiest people have the healthiest perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They don't go through the happiest times. They don't have like the
Right.
happiest moments, but they just have
Right.
the healthiest perspective towards things like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is working for me. This is serving me. And so I realized we have two perspectives, either a prison perspective or a power perspective. And the prison perspective is a lot of blame. It's a lot of everybody's fault. It's a lot of lack of ownership. It's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of pointing fingers. The power perspective says, you know what? This is hard. This sucks. But
Mm-hmm.
you know what? I'm going to get through it because I understand what's dependent on me to keep showing up. And so you take
Mm-hmm.
the ownership
Yep.
over your life. And the last section is protect your soul. And we talk about simplifying happiness. And I love talking about that because, there's a saying that says happiness works off of what's happening. I think that's external happiness. I think you can choose to be happy at any time of the day, at any point
Sure.
of the day. It's in your control. Happiness is an internal job, which is a choice. And what taught me that was my 4-year-old daughter and all my kids, but my 4-year-old daughter, the last 3 years, 2021 was a very, very hard year for me. And it was hard for me to protect my peace. It's funny, as I was writing this book, I was going through the seasons of really applying these principles to my life. And she comes in my room 6 a.m. in the morning, sunrise, and she's just singing a song that it's morning time. She's happy. My first reaction, like, Marley, go back to sleep. I'm tired Saturday.
Yeah.
But I caught myself and I was like, man, like as we gotten older, when did we make happiness so complicated? She's
Mm.
happy that she gets to brush her teeth. She's happy that it's morning time. She's just happy. And
Mm-hmm.
so I realized like we overcomplicate happiness. If you look at somebody's happiness checklist for majority of people, it's all these things that have to go right
Stuff.
in a day.
Stuff. It's stuff, isn't it? It's material
Absolutely.
often.
So I want to simplify that by just saying
Yeah.
I'm happy because I have a roof over my head. And I know it seems so like, oh, that's so optimistic. I'm like, well, what's the other alternative? Like, I'm happy
Mm-hmm.
because I have these things, and I know how it feels to get things taken away.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm happy to walk. I just ruptured my Achilles in 2022. I'm just now getting back to myself, so I'm happy that I just can walk because I couldn't walk for 2 years.
Yeah.
So I bring people on that journey of simplifying happiness. And the last part of that is just in that section, I'll touch on briefly, is living fulfillment. And I think fulfillment is the thing we all should be seeking.
Mm-hmm.
Not things, not possessions. Those things are okay. But fulfillment works off of doing what you love with who you love. You know, my mother, she passed away in 2021, and it really taught me that, like, this is real. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have our day where we're not here. And what's really going to matter? You know, I watched her battle cancer for 4 years, and I watched her go through our moments of hospice and all these things. And I'm like, I wondered, like, man, did she really get to do the things that she wanted to do? And I believe she
Mm.
did. I believe she
Good.
died in peace because she lived in purpose.
I
And so I
love
say,
it.
you know what? I want to start living in more purpose and do the things that fulfill me, even if people don't agree with it. Even people say, Trent, you should be doing more. You should be doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to allow fulfillment to control my pace of life because I know I won't live a regret in the future if I live in fulfillment. So I take people on that journey
Yep.
holistically with protecting your peace.
So good. It's so good. You know, I kind of want to rewind a little bit when we think about energy and then mind and
Yeah.
soul. I love it. You know, I am a huge, as a sports agent, we talked about that before we came on. Great athletes often ask themselves, where will I spend my energy?
Yeah.
Business people often say, where am I going to spend my time? And they accept meetings and they show up at meetings and then they show up for the meeting that really matters and they don't have the kind of energy they need. Right.
Right.
And so I think at some level it's saying, who deserves my energy? Right. So
Yeah.
and who doesn't? And so I think tactically, though, boundaries, to your point, can be bridges. Can you get me inside of how you navigated some of the conversations that what I would imagine were very difficult,
Yeah.
where you had to create space and boundary to protect your peace, to disconnect, as you say? Can you get
I,
me inside of maybe a scenario like that? I think that would be helpful.
yeah, for sure. So this is the thing about boundaries. I'm glad you brought this up because some people set silent boundaries. And I'm going to use this word, and I've been guilty of it, but it's immature
Mm-hmm.
because you're setting a boundary that nobody knows they need to respect. And what happens is you build resentment for that person or situation for not respecting a boundary that they don't even know it's there. So you have to communicate clearly if you expect to have that person to have a fair expectation on, how they need to respect your boundaries or your time or et cetera. So number one, you got to clearly communicate what you need. And so those conversations are tough. And most people don't set boundaries for two reasons. Number one is out of worry. They worry about the conversation. They worry about the confrontation. They worry
Mm-hmm.
about, what's going to happen after. Is this person, if I set this boundary, going to tell everybody my business and all these things? And then the second is guilt. A lot of us, we feel guilty because we feel like we're leaving people behind. We're keeping people shut out their life. And what's helped me was understanding this. And I like to put in a kind of a scenario of, I call it your growth party. If you have a birthday party or a wedding, whatever it is, you send out invitations and people get those invitations. They have a choice whether to show up to the event or not. And it's the same with your growth party. Those conversations to me are my invitation to people. Hey, this is what I'm doing in my life. This is
Mm-hmm.
why I can no longer do this. This is why I can no longer be around this. This is why I can no longer be involved in this. So yeah, when I left a lifestyle after football, when my son was born, I had to tell some friends, hey man, I can't keep living like this
Mm-hmm.
because I want to live a better life. I want to live a more fulfilled life, a more purposeful life. Some friends didn't get it. Some
Yeah.
friends got it. Some people took the invitation, say, hey, Trent, we riding with you. Some
Mm-hmm.
friends said, we ain't doing that. And it got to a point as I continued to grow and I realized I didn't need their energy. Then it became, oh, Trent changed on us or you
Yeah.
switched up. And I'll tell
Yeah.
everybody listening to this right now, if switching up means that you're better in your life, keep switching up. If
Yeah.
changing means what you should change anyway, if changing means that you're doing something more beneficial for your future and it's not a bad thing, keep changing. And
Mm-hmm.
so it removes the guilt from me because I know I sent out the invitation. I had the
Yeah.
conversation. If you didn't choose to show up at the growth party,
Uh-huh.
that's on you. But I know I
Yeah.
sent out the invitation. So that's helped me be able to manage and have those hard conversations with people.
You know, I wrote a book called The Energy Clock, Trent, and to me, one of the things that I think is important, and I'm curious how you approach it, is getting really clear on your core values, getting really clear on the legacy you want to leave, getting really clear on who you want at your 90th birthday party,
Yeah.
getting really clear on what do you want on your tombstone? What do
Yep.
you want your legacy to be? And then pulling back and saying, okay, now how do I, with a tremendous amount of intention, fundamentally structure my days and my life in a way that allows that to align with what I first got clear on matters most. So, with that, how do you tactically schedule your life in such a way that it protects your peace, protects your energy?
I think you hit the nail on the head with the word intention. And obviously, with intention, you have to know what you want. I think it's great to, I always say, I talk to the future Trent. I go have a conversation with the 60-year-old, 70-year-old, 80-year-old Trent that's lived his best life. I like to say the greatest version of myself. And that person tells me, like, hey, this is what you need to do in order to meet me. These are some conversations you need to have, some things you need to leave behind, some things you need to start, some things you need to do to get outside your comfort zone. And so I have that conversation and what I need. And I break it down pretty simply. Like, I always break my life down to PEC, peace, energy, and connection. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
always going to do everything with peace starting off my day. Peace is my priority. So it literally is the priority of my life and the standard of my life. So I'm going to start my day off with that. So if it's taken away from my peace, it's too expensive. And I know sometimes I might miss out on opportunities, but I'm perfectly okay with that because
Right.
peace is God in my life, because I know peace is going to control the pace I need to run at. Because if I allow something else to control my pace, I'm going to burn out. Second thing is just my energy, as we talked about. I like to think about my day with, there's a thing where, in the world where we talk about, like, the biggest task and eat the frog. And that's great for some people. But for me,
Mm-hmm.
like, my energy battery will just, I don't know if it's my introverted, extroverted self, but like it will deplenish very quickly. And so what I've learned to do is I ask myself this question: what's the number one thing I can do this morning, first thing when I wake up, that's going to multiply my energy? It doesn't take a lot of energy, but it's the
Mm-hmm.
biggest generator to add to energy. So when I get to podcasts like this and interviews like this, or when I'm doing something big later on in the day, my energy's been multiplied so much and been generated by doing the small things that I can show up in a big energy way for
Mm-hmm.
what needs most of my energy. So I attack my days like that. And then the last part is connection. I'm always going to do things that connect me to my purpose, that connect
Mm-hmm.
me to my sense of worth, that connects me to my sense of being. And that looks different. Sometimes spending time with my kids, going to serve, showing up online, writing, whatever it may be. But I'm going to do things that connects me to my purpose, that lets me know that I'm worth it. Because I
Yeah.
talk about this in the book. A lot of times we don't feel like we're worth it because our worth is connected to some outside of us that we cannot control. Our worth is connected to how people feel about us. It's connected to the algorithm, all our business, the P&Ls. So I'm going to do things that connect me to the purpose that keeps me going. So like my day is structured through those three things, and it's worked for me.
How do you protect your mind? You talked about vision and guarding your focus and perspective in a world that, oh my gosh, right? The number of things coming at us is out of control.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of perspective, right? I love, you're on an airplane and something little happens and the flight attendant is, so worried. And it's like, look, it's no problem you don't have limes, right? It's
Yeah.
no big, right? Like, I mean, I think at some level you've got to pull back and go, this is not a problem at
Right.
all. So, but the things that we consume mentally, they change the way we show up. They change the way we serve. They change our energy. They change our connections. So, what are some of the consistent routines, if you will, that allow you to shift perspective quickly so you can show up better for the next moment?
Yeah. So I'll say this when it comes to, like, because we are in the age of information overload. Like, we are. I mean, you pick
Sure.
up your phone, it's like having a conversation with a million people. And for me, like, my energy is not good for that. Like, I just feel depleted. So I'm always going to make sure that I don't trust myself in these situations. So like, I'm not going to have my phone, you know, on me when I'm working. I'm going to put it somewhere else. Like, I'm going to make sure that I booby trap like my things around me so I don't go to these things so I can really focus. Cause I know how my focus is. I'm not sure anybody else is like, what I focus on is like what I start feeling. So if I'm focused on something, I get distracted, I'm gonna spend time there and it gets me out of flow state. So I'm gonna make sure like my life is on do not disturb. And this is something that, I get a little flack for, I guess, but it's something I'm okay with. Like even my mornings, like half of my mornings are on do not disturb. You know what I mean?
I
Like
love it.
from the outside world, like I'm taking
Mm-hmm.
no calls, not doing anything because I know I need to give that to my life. So I just want to say that off top, like in guarding your focus, you have to know who you are and you have to not trust yourself so much or give yourself so much credit that I can just, get on my phone and not be distracted. Like
Right.
you got to know how to safeguard your peace and to safeguard your
Mm-hmm.
focus.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to shifting perspective, like I'll say this, and I don't know if this answers the question, but this what comes in my heart. To go from my prison to my power, I simply ask myself this question, and I'm gonna take my time with this so people will get this. But when things used to happen in my life, I used to say, "What does this mean?" And the meaning that I usually created from that question was a disempowering meaning because I would just take something from my past. So NFL, it
Mm-hmm.
means that my life is over. What I've learned how to do is add a few words to that question. Instead of saying, what does this mean? I now ask myself, what is this going to mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that simple adage of words puts the power in my control. So it's going to mean whatever I want it to mean. We can't, an experience is meaningless until we give it meaning. So I realized,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I can create whatever meaning it is to whatever situation. So when my mother died, it was hard. But
Sure.
I said, this means that I'm going to appreciate life more than ever. This means that I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to hug my kids and be around my father and call him more. This means that I'm going to show up more in this life. That's what it meant. It could have meant I'm never going to have a mom again or talk to her ever. It's true, yes. But how was
Mm-hmm.
that serving my soul? How is that helping me through my grief? And so I've learned how to say that question, what is this going to mean? And that immediately puts me into a solution in a powerful state to be able to create a meaning that's going to serve my future.
It's good stuff, man. I often say, how do we ensure that change is happening for us, not
Mm,
to us?
that's right.
Often we think, to your point, right? We go into that victim mindset versus saying, what's possible now? How can I shift the lens and recognize the gifts? Is at some level what you're saying in this, and the shift that we can make just in our minds. Why do you think we give away our peace so freely, Trent?
Mm, that's an amazing question. I think there's a few reasons, but the one that's popped up in my heart is I think a lot of us don't really know our worth.
Mm,
And we tie our worth to how people feel about us. We tie our worth to how people see us. I think a lot of times we only feel we're valuable if people see our value. We only feel we're worthy if people actually see our worth. And so we will lose ourselves to please someone else. We will say yes when we know we want to say no.
mm-hmm,
We will say, sure, I'll do it when we know we don't want to do it. And I think we're so afraid to let people down. And I
mm-hmm.
always tell people, like, I used to be like that. I used to be as I call a triple P, professional people pleaser. And my worth came from that. Like, I want to please everybody and be there for everybody. And that's mission impossible. I wrote this years ago in a spoken word online called Pick Me Apart. The first lines was the first step to being unhappy is trying to please everyone else. And so I had to let go of that. And my fear is no longer letting people down. And of course, I don't want to do that on purpose, but my fear is
Sure.
no longer letting people down. My biggest fear is letting myself down.
Mm.
Because if I know if I let Trent down, then the people who need me to be the best me, eventually they're
Mm-hmm.
going to be let down too. So I think the thing is we don't know our worth and we're so afraid to let people down that, we will lose ourselves just to make somebody else happy.
It's interesting, isn't it, that we say yes, 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 and then what gets compromised is ourselves, our sleep, our we skip the workouts, we skip the call to the the parents, the friends. We let go of all of that, and it feels like it's incredibly important for people to pull back and say, what really matters most? Because I think if we can shift our lens to the perspective that you're speaking to, which is when I'm saying no, actually I'm saying yes to something I previously got clear was more important to me,
That's right.
which is huge. To me, it's an important component. What are some of the biggest blockers, right? Like, so when you think about the things that prevent people from protecting their peace, right? We know that they've got to say no more. We know that they've got to be clear on setting boundaries. What would be other sort of warning signs that, oops, you're on a train that's not taking you where you're going to protect your peace? Do these things.
I think in today's world, I like to look at it as pace, right? I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but this helps me a lot because I think as business owners, I think as athletes, I think as entrepreneurs, I think as just humans in general, like life is a race, right? They say life is a marathon, and at some point this race will be over. And so as I look at it like that, and me being a track guy in high school, my coach would always tell me, "Hey, man, like don't try to keep up with them. Like run your pace, because if you don't run your
Yeah.
pace in this 400, you're gonna be looking bad on that last 100-meter stretch." And so many times, my ego, my pride, comparison, I want to prove that I was worth it, got me out of pace, and I ran a terrible time. And so I would ask the listener right now is like, what's controlling your pace? And so I think one of the first things or main things that keeps you from your peace is comparison.
Mm-hmm.
I think so many people are living in comparison, especially on the social media world. Like we look out and say, oh, okay, that's what I need to do to be successful, which is great. And a part of it is we live in a highlight culture, right? Everybody's showing their best, which is nothing wrong with that. I don't feel like people just show their worst all the time. So nothing wrong with that. But we look out and we compare our life and say, oh, I see this person at year 10. I'm just starting, so I need to be at year 10. So now I run a pace that I cannot keep up with.
Yeah.
I have no patience. I'm impatient. And now I get to a point where it's 2-3 months or even a year. Now I'm burnt out and I quit and I go do something and say, oh, this wasn't meant for my life, even though it probably was.
Right.
You just weren't patient enough. So comparison is a big thing. And people, the people around you will take away from your peace or will actually bring more peace into your life. And so I like to ask myself this question: is my environment helping me love myself more, or is it helping me create more of a war inside myself?
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at your life, you need to be around people that not even necessarily like gives you peace, but they don't take away from it, right? They are happy for your happiness. They are happy for your wins. They are not in competition with you. They are there to support you, there to uplift you. They believe in your vision, even when they can't see it, even when it seems impossible to them. They still like, hey, man, go do it. I'm here to ride with you. I'm here to support you. So I think that's a big thing. When you look externally, like that's what peace is, right? Peace doesn't mean the storm doesn't exist.
Right.
Peace means that the storm is going to pass. Peace doesn't mean that there's no chaos around you. Peace means that the chaos around you doesn't kill the calm inside you. But at the same time, when you experience that calm, you want less chaos around you. And so I had to let go of certain things that I didn't want to let go of in people in order to experience more peace in my life. And so sometimes that took loving some people that I love from a distance. And that was hard, but it was necessary for me to experience the peace that I needed to experience.
And then you show up with the kind of love and engagement and purpose and energy and focus for the ones that do matter most. When we protect our peace, Trent, are we more present in life?
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%. And presence is one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself and you can give someone else. When you have no peace in your life, when you're being guided by panic, you're being guided by fear, you're being guided by worry, there's no way you can be present, even in conversations, even the things that matter, even with your kids. There was times in my journey where, I didn't have peace, and my baby girls or Tristan, they're right there and they're having a moment, right? They're taking their first steps or they're at gymnastics practice. I'm so worried about all these other things that I can't be present. And I'll never forget, my baby girl looks up at me at gymnastics and she's looking at me like, Like, you better put that phone away and pay me attention. In that moment, I said, man. So one thing tactically that I want to give people with presence is just ask yourself this question. I do it all the time. Is how can I be more present? Like, I'm having a conversation. I'm at a moment where I need to be present. I keep asking myself, how can I be more present? How can I be more present? And that's a gift that you give to others as well as giving yourself. But you got to be at peace, or else your mind is going to be all over the place and not be focused on what truly matters.
Sure, no question. I love it. Listen, I could steal your whole day, man, but I gotta drop you. I know you got all kinds of things to go do in people's lives to change and impact in such incredible ways. So Trent, I end with rapid fire. I'm going to fire off some quick ones. You ready, man?
Yes, let's do it.
What's your morning routine?
Protecting my peace outside, taking in the sunrise.
Mm. So you step outside, take that in, and is there anything else that you do in the
Yeah.
morning that really helps you stay at peace?
Yeah. So as I'm taking the sunrise in, I go through my release therapy that I call it. And so all I'm doing is breathing techniques where I I inhale what I need in my life. I picture that.
Mm.
So if I need peace, if I need clarity, I hold to let it marinate through my soul, and I release what I don't need. So I do that on live sometimes with the community. But yeah, the sunrise lets me know that I'm blessed with another day. So I'm addicted to sunrise and sunsets.
I love it. Was that your evening routine? Sunset, same deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
I love
Sunsets,
it.
reflective therapy on the back patio and porch.
What's one piece of wisdom or advice that's really stuck with you over the years? And who did it come from?
I believe this came from one of my grandparents. I'm not sure which one, but they always told me that it could be worse and it will get better.
Mm, so good. In the last year, is there a new habit that or ritual that you've deployed in your life that's helped you be a little bit better?
Hmm. I would say frequency, as I would say therapy. So I listen to a lot of frequencies, a lot of healing frequencies and sounds on my runs. So I don't listen to music much anymore. I listen to that on my runs and my walks. And I feel like it puts me a lot more peace.
Tell me about that. I know this is rapid fire,
Yeah.
but is that on iTunes, Apple,
Yeah.
Spotify, whatever?
Yeah, you can
Healing
find YouTube,
frequencies?
Spotify. Yeah, just healing frequencies. There's so many different ones,
Yeah,
with the sounds of frequencies. And it helps me as an athlete. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if this is for everybody, but when I listen to certain music, it gets me out of pace. I'm too excited. But
Hmm.
this one just puts me in a zone where like I drift away and I get lost in my runs, in the trails, in nature, or even when I'm walking. It just makes it seem, I wouldn't say easier, but it
Hmm.
just brings me to a place where my mind is more focused on, I feel like, what it needs. And so I just feel better.
I try to put that on when I'm jumping in my cold plunge. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Just to
for sure.
just to
That too.
stay
Yep.
at peace when
I
I'm
do
at
that
50
too.
degrees, man.
I do that too.
I
Yep.
love it. What's your favorite book? The book that changed or impacted your life the most?
The one that comes to mind is, that's two. As a Man Thinketh and Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren.
Yeah. So the show's called Game Changer. So one last question: who or what's a game changer who inspires you, and why?
Hmm. My dad.
Mm,
Um, my dad raised three boys. My dad came from Little Rock, Arkansas, didn't have nothing. He's been at UPS for over 50 years now. And more importantly, he's always showed up to everything that I've ever had, my brothers had, and his grandkids ever had. So he's an example of what a man, a father is. So
mm,
he's changed the game for me.
amen. Trent Shelton, boy, man of a lot of wisdom for a super young guy. Hey, thanks so much for taking a minute. This was super fun.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.